Welcome to the She's All That video podcast, where every week I bring you conversations with fascinating women doing awesome shit, impacting lives, and making change. I'm 𝗕𝗿𝘆𝗪, and today in this episode I talk with Dr. Brandye MD.
She's all that.
OBGYN, a board-certified gynecologist, a woman's sex and pleasure coach, and she's the author of the book My Oh My, A Committed Woman's Guide to Getting the Great Sex That She Deserves. In this stimulating and occasionally irreverent conversation, we go deep on topics like why good sex is actually all around good for your health, the impact of last summer's mega hit WAP, why 20 minutes is a foreplay minimum for women, her book, My Oh My, her mini course, Stop Faking It, and so much more. Keep listening for a conversation that will arouse your curiosity and entertain.
She's all that.
Dr. Brandye, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you. I am super excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. And I can't wait to get started.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'd kind of like to put out there is just starting this whole conversation is the fundamental disconnect on this whole issue. Because on the one hand, women, their bodies and their sexuality are the driving engine for an enormous portion of business, marketing, and sales. On the other hand, women openly talking about and owning their sexuality is anathema. And so seemingly damning, like, oh my God, why is she talking about this? And if you ever want to smear a woman, you weaponize and use her sexuality against her. So if other people and businesses and corporations are actually profiting on our sexuality, they're profiting on what we are, but we're not allowed to fully own this. You must see the knock-on effects in that in your business and with your clients. And how do you deal with that?
You know, I think the first piece of what I do is give women a space for having that conversation. A lot of my clients that come to me are like, I'm so glad that I'm talking to you. I didn't know who to talk to. And even in my practice as, the clinician, the OBGYN, even in that space, a lot of times women will come in and they're like, I don't know if you're the right person to talk to, but this is what I'm having. And it's like, well, I'm the gynecologist.
If not you, who?
If anybody should be talking to you about
this, the grocery clerk is the wrong person.
You probably shouldn't talk to the appointment clerk about that, but you can talk to me about that. But even within my specialty, there are not a whole lot of physicians who are well versed in women's pleasure and sex in general. And then don't get me started about the dysfunctional stuff of low libido and not having orgasms, and it's painful and those things like that. So just even creating the space for a conversation is important.
Now,
but I think
I'm curious around that. You're right. Those are not conversations that I've experienced with an OBGYN. That's they're more clinical about it. Is that something in your education or in the practice within your community, your licensed community? Like, do the doctors talk about like, should we be delving into that with our clients, or is it kind of like, no, just leave that on the other side?
I think historically it has been in the realm of therapists, sex therapists, regular therapists, all of that, and not something that we delve into. And there's a few reasons for that. One is just this general discomfort with talking about sex, doctor or not, just nobody, it's a taboo subject. It's like money, religion, politics, although politics is coming on the table now, but it is one of those taboo subjects that is like, ooh, sex, I can't talk about that. Like I can see it on TV, I can see you advertising and I'm like, ooh, I want that. But I can't have the conversation, a real conversation about sex. So that's baseline. And then there's this thought process of, okay, I don't have enough time because we get 10 minutes, we got to address everything. And if you're thinking about, okay, what's going to kill this person?
Right.
Sex probably is not going to kill them. Short term. Long term, it can have some other effects, but short term, no.
You mean lack of?
Lack of?
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And then the third piece of it is this idea that I'm opening Pandora's box and I don't know what to do to put her back in.
I mean, never get them out of my office.
Right. Like, or we open it and then it's like, well, I got 15 other people who are waiting for me right now. And I really can't get into what you really need about how to get past this. So I think those are probably the top three things, coupled with the fact that when I see women in my office, like I specifically will ask, are you having any issues with sex? Are you enjoying your sex life? And I try to get that conversation going. But a lot of times, if I'm not very intentional about that, I will get to finish with everything, finish the exam, all the stuff, put my hand on the door, I'm about to leave. Oh, by the way, doctor, I don't want to have sex like I used to, and I want to know why. Okay, we got to make another appointment because that's not a 2-minute, all right, take this pill, do what you got to do, and I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd seen that in one of your questions that you wish people knew that, yeah, this isn't about just taking a pill and everything's solved.
Yeah.
So
it's a little different.
So, I mean, that you've actually kind of bucked the trend, and as an OBGYN and physician have actually seen this need is here. And while it doesn't fit into the time slots that my practice allows, you've created this whole other practice. What was that moment in your career that you thought, no, I got to broaden this out?
I think it started when I was in my private practice and I was seeing women and, mind you, I had been going through issues with low sex drive since my late 20s and had been looking for resources and trying to find things, even going to conferences for our governing body, American Congress of OBGYN. And I remember going to a presentation, a keynote, and the person was saying, invariably, when you're in a relationship, your sex drive is inversely proportional to how long you've been in the relationship. And so the longer you're in a relationship, the less you will desire that person.
This is inevitable?
That was the premise.
Was this a man or a woman, just out of curiosity?
It was a man. It was a man. And the solution proposed was get a new partner. And I'm like, but wait, I like my partner. I don't want to get a new partner. I want to enjoy my time with that partner. So, I was just very disappointed in what I was finding and the information that I was finding. And everything was kind of like this quick fix. Oh, okay, if you do this, if you get some, some lingerie, or if you go on a trip or do all these things, and it's like, okay, that's great for 1, 2, maybe 3 times, but nothing was lasting. And I was like, okay, I got to do, there's got to be something else. This is not all that there is. And so I started to look at the practices and things that I was doing. And honestly, my story is that I got very depressed. I went through burnout, not necessarily because of sex, but that was one of the key indicators that something was wrong. And so I started to look at certain things. And during this process, marriage fell apart, all kinds of things. And it was just like, okay, we got to do something different. This is not what we want. This is not what I envisioned for my life. I thought I got married, I had a child, I'd got the degree, I started the practice. I have everything. I have the dream, but I was so unhappy. And so I had to begin to peel back the layers of what was going on. And in peeling back those layers, I found out, what I needed to do to be happy, what I needed to do to feel good, what I needed to do to feel good about myself, what I needed to do to feel good about what I was accomplishing. And so as I was finding those things in my practice, I was having ladies come in and they were like, doctor, can you check my hormones? And I'm like, okay, what are we checking hormones for? And they're like, well, I think I'm in menopause. I'm like, okay, why do you think you're in menopause? And they're like, because I don't want to have sex. And it was like, okay, well, let's talk, because you're 29, 30 years old, and it's a little early. It is possible, but not likely. Let's talk. And so as we were going through these discussions, it was like, okay, That's not, no, it's not menopause. You're not having hot flashes, not having vaginal dryness, none of the things.
Yeah.
But you are experiencing this drop in your sex drive. And why could that be? Okay. And that's kind of where the biohacks for a better sex life came into play, because those were the things that really just baseline need to be taken care of and optimized in order for you to have a great sex life.
And for anybody watching or listening, hang on, because we're going to get to these biohacks that Dr. Brandye talks about. She's got an amazing download that she gives out for free that's going to change things for you. That's coming up. Sorry, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So talking to your women.
So talking to them in the office, and, it'd be like, okay, well, listen, do this, do this, do this. And I would give them their homework.
Yeah.
And then they would go and do the homework and come back and chat with me. But while I was doing these assessments and talking to them, I would get super excited and passionate. And it was just like, oh my God, this I love. Like, the highlight of my day was having somebody and being able to talk to them about their sex and pleasure and what that meant and why it was so important.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, this is what I want to do.
It lights you up, and women need it. Yeah. It's definitely something that needs to happen. Oh, so
For sure.
Just out of curiosity, a little sidebar here. One of the questions that you said that you sometimes get is, so you're starting to this was, what does your mother think about what you do?
Right?
What does your mother think?
Well, when I first began doing it, she asked, like, it was an evolution of things.
Yeah.
Because she would ask a couple questions and then that was it. And
now,
then
were
a
the
few months
questions
later,
around like your choices to actually be kind of expanding your career, or your choices about talking about it, or
talking about it? And so it wasn't necessarily about expanding my career, because she's just like, you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of you regardless. And I want to see you do whatever you want to do. So mom is my biggest supporter. But there were questions about, okay, well, what exactly do you talk about? And, who exactly are you working with? And how is that playing out? And then when I wrote the book, she was like, okay. But by that time, she had gotten kind of comfortable with what I was doing. I think one time I ended up having to do a strategy session with a client while I was at her house. And so she was listening into the questions that I was asking.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, okay. And I think that was kind of the turning point.
Yeah.
Where she was like, oh, okay, this is important stuff. So by the time I wrote the book, she was like, okay, well, can I get my copy? I want to read it. And,
Nice.
She's going through it and reading it and taking notes. And she's like, I got questions for you about this. And we're going to have a conversation about this.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm.
Fabulous. It's so interesting when I can see, your mom's looking at you. She's so proud of you. This is such a fraught subject. And as I said, hey, it's our bodies, it's our sexuality that's basically moving half of marketing, if not more, out there. And yet it's very tenuous ground to be walking. And your mom would be looking at, like, I could imagine she's thinking, do you want to get known as the woman who talks about something that's going to lessen your reputation and your standing? Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm so glad that she got what you were doing, and now she's totally on board reading your book and one of your biggest fans on this.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I noticed when I was looking through all the material that you had sent to me about this, because I really wanted to make sure that I knew where you were going, and your hashtags. I love that. Good sex matters. Sex is self-care. The big O. Now, that this is coming from a respected physician and a businesswoman, this says this is not frivolous stuff. Good sex matters. And it's self-care. How is taking care of our sexuality and being in the right place with it, how is that self-care?
Well, first and foremost, we were created as sexual beings. We are not created as asexual beings. So we have this innate desire. And I always like to bring in some aspects of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I think for a lot of people, they only think about it in terms of accomplishments and what they're doing, but they don't think of it excuse me, in terms of how it plays into our overall sense of well-being. So sex, although in most of the diagrams and stuff that you'll see, sex is on the foundational or bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's on there with food, water, air, things like shelter, things like that.
But the fact that it even shows up as a need there, really think about it, that's huge. It's a need.
Well,
it's not a frivolity.
It is. However, it shows up there as this idea of, okay, we got to keep the species going. It's a necessity because we got to keep the species going. It's about procreation, not necessarily about pleasure,
the individual,
or any of the other things. Right, exactly. But yes, you're right. It's there. Thank you, Jesus. It's there. So the second level is security and safety. And sex shows up there because as women, we have to feel like we are safe. We have to feel like we are secure. And that can be something as simple as the door is closed and locked. And the kids
within our
within our physical space.
Yeah.
However, you also have to feel safety and security in your relationship. Because if you are not comfortable with that person, you will not be able to have the most pleasurable experience that you can have. There are literal places and parts of your brain that have to either shut off or be ramped down in order for you to have and enjoy great sex. So if you're not there, you won't be able to. And so that's why having a glass of wine helps, because it lowers your inhibitions and allows you to feel a certain sense of safety and security. The third piece is the third level is love and intimacy. And we were made to connect with other people. We were not made to be islands. We were not made to just exist. And so when we don't connect with other people, when we don't have that sense of love and intimacy, and specifically in an intimate relationship, it is impacting our ability to thrive in the world. And even in the medical profession, when we see little babies who are born and they are premature and they go into the NICU, you can give them all the formula and the nutrients and all that stuff. But if you don't give them a sense of connection, you don't hold them, you don't talk to them, you don't interact with them, they don't grow, they don't thrive. And it's actually a condition called failure to thrive. And that
is not just in infants.
Yeah, it's not just in infants.
We are physical beings. Yeah,
exactly. We don't not get taller or any of that stuff, because by that time we have reached our points where we're going to be. But we don't thrive.
Wow.
So then fourth level has to do more with self-confidence and self-esteem. And with sex, that shows up as our confidence in our body and our ability to appreciate ourselves, be confident in ourselves, and know who we are and be comfortable in the skin that we're in. And that's the sexy layer. That's the layer that I like to call the sexy layer. And then finally, the fifth layer is self-actualization. And that's where you are reaching your creative goals. You're reaching those points in your life and in your relationships, career, where everything is at its peak. It's what you are realizing what you were put here to be and to do. Mm-hmm. So that's how sex shows up in all of those levels. And so that's why I say it's self-care, because it ultimately is getting you to the purpose for why you were here, why you were put on this earth, what your soul is here to do.
That ties into every layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, that should be out there writ large as to why it is that sex is an important part of who we are and should be.
It is. It is.
Now, one of the things that we had in previous conversations, you had said that sometimes, like women get together and they may be of a certain age, or even at 29, I'm just not interested. The comment of like, yeah, no, I'm done. I'm past all that. Like, if it is such an important part of who we are, what can you say to a person like that? And are they in fact fine with that?
Well, that's the first question. Are they in fact fine with that? Or have they just had this resignation that this is how it is and there's nothing I can do about it. That's one of the myths that women have around this, is that there's, this is how it is and there's nothing I can do about it. Or it's, okay, this is how it is. I can just take a pill and it'll be fine. And it's not either of those. There are things that you can do about it. There are definitely people who you can talk to about it to get the help that you need. But this is not business as usual for your sex drive to decline. And even once you get to the age of menopause, it's not just supposed to automatically decline. There are things that happen that make it decline, like your interrupted sleep and your change in your mood and sometimes the vaginal dryness. But even addressing, because a lot of times women who are menopausal will come in because they're having painful sex and they're like, I don't want to have sex. Why am I having sex? It hurts so much, yada, yada, yada. And then we give the treatment that we can give. We solve that problem and they're still like, yeah, no, I still don't want it.
Why?
Right. And so some of that is just the thoughts and ideas and myths that they have already had formed going into menopause. Some of that is just a retraining of, okay, it can be pleasurable. We did address the dryness. These are the things that you need to do so that you can move forward and have a pleasurable experience. It's interrupting the pain cycle and the psychological pain cycle, and getting them to a point where it's, okay, yeah, this does feel good. Yeah, I can do this. Yes, it is beneficial for me.
Are there any other myths? You had mentioned that your mission was to address the myths women have around their pleasure and their sexual desire. So we've got the ones you've already mentioned. Anything else that you find comes up with your clients?
Many.
Yeah?
So many.
Tell me.
Hey everyone, I'm just bringing in here for a moment to say I hope you're enjoying this episode and this week's guest. Have you been thinking about becoming a speaker or a podcast guest to get your message out there? It's a really great opportunity, but for a podcast host to take that risk on you, you need a solid pitch. And who better to tell you how to craft that podcast pitch than a podcast host? I can help you craft the perfect pitch that's going to get you booked on the perfect podcast for you. With my perfect pitch working consultation, in just 1 hour, we'll develop the pitch to get you booked on the right podcast for you. This offer regularly goes for $125, but my listeners can save 20% with the link and the discount code below in the show notes. I'm excited to help you get started as a great podcast guest. And now, back to the show.
That I'm not supposed to have sex. This is not supposed to be enjoyable for me. It's just
wait a minute,
for my
I'm
partner.
not supposed to have what? Where does that come from?
Right. Well, this idea that sex is just for procreation and it's not supposed to be this pleasurable act. It's just supposed to be getting the job done of, being fruitful and multiplying. But that is not.
That is totally not in alignment. I can get, maybe from some religious teachings where, I mean, I don't know, religion doesn't really encourage women's sexuality at all. But I mean, I can see that might have put that over there. But our whole society turned on any one of your devices and it's like women's sex. So where would you get the idea? And it's not women's sex to have babies. It's women having sex because women are sex objects or sexy beasts. Where would you get the idea?
The sex object piece of it. We are objects of someone else's pleasure.
Exactly. The male gaze. Yeah. So that's how they're seeing it, is like, it's not for me.
Right.
It's not about me. I'm just kind of the semi-willing participant.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Pass.
Yeah, right. Like, let's get that out of there.
Yeah. That must be a difficult conversation to have when you hear somebody, because they're your patients, you're your clients, you respect them, and it's like, what do you say?
I think for me, is giving space for them to express it and to say what their thoughts are, and then to give an alternative thought. Have you thought about it this way? And that really is powerful, because you're not, again, like, we've had all these ideas and thoughts about sex kind of shoved down our throat. It's not about shoving anything down our throats. It's about opening our minds to questions.
Yeah.
And just saying, that's interesting. What about this? Had you thought about this?
And again, that's why you're the best person to be talking about it. Right? Because
well, it took a minute to get there, but
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So getting rid of all the myths. I mean, one of the things, you've got your Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yay, that checks boxes with me. Yes, the scientific side of things. And then benefits. I mean, I noticed in some of your material, you had a really interesting event at the end of December, which I totally missed, which was storyboarding around your sexuality.
The vision board.
Vision
The
board.
pleasure principles.
That's amazing.
I love it.
So I was lurking on that, and I noticed some of the things you said was one of the questions to ask yourself was why you need pleasure in your life. Like, what would you say around somebody who's like, why do you need sexual pleasure in your life?
Yeah. Well, I think if we break it down bottom line for people, there are a couple of important reasons why. One, for your overall health, because sex benefits your overall health, your overall outlook on life, your positive outlook on life. If you have a pessimistic or negative outlook on life, you're more likely to see more negative, and it's just going to kind of snowball and spiral. Versus if you can have a more positive outlook on life, you're more likely to see the positive things.
Now, does that come from the endorphins around orgasms?
It does.
Yay, endorphins.
Yay, endorphins. Also, the second piece is you'll have greater satisfaction with your relationship if you're having good sex.
Yes.
Greater.
Yeah, we need the oxytocin, so it's got to be good sex. Yeah.
Right. It's got to be good sex. And then it actually translates or can translate into more money for you.
What?
Yes. So
this gets better and better.
It does, right? There was a study that came out last year, and they showed that women who were more satisfied with their sex life were better at problem solving and better and more creative. And that led to a higher sense of being a leader, of being able to be a leader. So promotion wise, so you were getting more money because of your sex life being good.
Now, I mean, from a maybe not even that standpoint, I can see that because you're just you're happier, you're more content, you're more you and living in your own skin. So everything's going to flow.
But when you're happier, there's less resistance to good ideas. There's less resistance to to being more creative. Because when you're unhappy, you're like, can I just get through today?
Yeah.
I just get up, get the kids, okay, I'm almost done with work. Okay, I can come home, get dinner and laundry and the kids and go to bed.
Yeah.
And that's it. So
which is a pretty miserable existence. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that just speaks to the whole pleasure principle. This is why we need it.
Exactly.
Sorry, you were saying I like to think of it as.
Yeah, no. I like to think of it like, I know I'm dating myself, but I remember when The Wizard of Oz came out, and it starts off in black and white.
That was in the 30s. You do not remember that.
Well, not when it came out, but I remember when I first saw it.
Yeah.
You're right. Otherwise, I'd be a vampire, and that's not it.
A whole new part of this episode.
A whole other conversation. But I remember seeing it on TV, and it started off in black and white, and Dorothy's doing her thing and all this stuff. She goes in her room, and there's this tornado, and she gets swept off to Oz, and then she lands in Oz, and it just all of this color and the beauty of it and all of that stuff, right? That's kind of what happens with sex. If you're not having great sex, or you're just like, I don't really want to, and you're just kind of getting through life, it's that black and white existence.
Yeah.
Once you start to have good sex, it's the amazing technicolor. It's so beautiful.
Vibrancy.
Yeah. Passion and vibrant colors. I love it.
Oh my God. I hadn't even thought of that. Yes, I'm all about the vibrance. I want vibrance in my environment and stimulation. Yes. Yes. One more reason why sex is the bomb.
Yes.
So the purpose of it, like to come back from that, you had said that you provide accurate information about the purpose, the true purpose of sex, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual dimensions. What are the spiritual dimensions of sex?
Well, there's a couple things. So one, just with understanding that sex is not bad and that God created you to be able to have it and to enjoy it. Because a lot of people have a lot of shame around sex and pleasure. Part of what we understand about sex and what I try to help people to understand is that it's not bad. It's something that you are supposed to have and enjoy. And it also can get you closer to God in the sense that you are experiencing these amazing levels of pleasure.
Yeah.
And for some people, you see God in that. There's, other spiritual practices around sex like Tantra and things like that have to do with connection. And I think that too is more in a spiritual realm of being connected to your source, connecting your source through you with another person. So that also plays into that spirituality piece. And then finally, I think with the spirituality piece is this idea of what is it that I'm doing that's pouring into my soul? What is feeding that inner piece of me that keeps me going and keeps me doing what I was put here to do? And I think those are
part
the
of that.
overarching, and sex is part of that.
You are selling this. I'm on board.
Good.
Not that I wasn't
Thank you.
already.
Right. Now we got to convince the rest of the world.
Oh, okay. Let me know how I can help with that. So,
all right. Well, you're doing it now.
yes. So, one of the questions that you had said or one of the statements I had read that I thought, that's interesting. Pause and think about that is your sexual relationship begins with you and your relationship with yourself. That's shown up a couple times in content around your book and around on your website. What do you mean by that?
So what I mean is that before you can give yourself to someone else, you have to know who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what is important to you, what your values are. You also have to be settled enough, grounded enough in who you are and your values, so that if there's something that is coming to you, someone who is coming to you that is not at that same level, you do not have a problem not entertaining them. Because a lot of times we entertain people in our lives who shouldn't be in our lives.
Yes.
And we do things with them because, oh, well, I want them to like me. Oh, well, I want them to do this or do that or stay with me or all of these things. And honestly, it doesn't serve us. It goes to lowering our vibration, lowering our sense of self, lowering our confidence in ourselves. Again, we're talking about Maslow again.
Yep.
And it's, it does not serve us. And so just being able to know who you are as a woman and then know what it is that you want sexually. Because the other piece of that is, okay, I know what I want. How do I share that with my partner? If I found somebody who I like and I'm, we're having a good time, how do I share that information? Well, if you don't know, how can you share it with them? And you can best believe they didn't get any education about how to please you.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows that. Like the only thing that you learn in sex ed is how not to get pregnant and how not to get an STD.
Yeah. And unfortunately, most young guys now, I've heard some statistics that, with the internet and the free access to online porn, and it's more and more hardcore objectifying the female kind of sexuality, they're coming into it with the education that they got from that, and it is totally unrealistic, and it's actually toxic. So even more important that you as a woman need to know what the deal is, what you like, how this is going to work for you, because he probably isn't coming into this very well profile. Yes. He does not know. Yeah. Right. Now, around the whole thing of your relationship begins with you. So it's not that whole thing that we get, bikini body and all that crap. Therefore I have to, tone up or do this or do that. Like, first of all, I consider they should consider themselves lucky that they're even in the game. So like whether I got a bikini body or not.
Right. And can I
Not
tell
even
you, most of the
open for
time,
question. Mhm.
they are happy regardless, because there's another myth out there that you have to be, this totally fit, beautiful woman in order to show your body to a man and or to your partner and be, to be desired. But that's not the case. That is not the case. You are worthy of pleasure and worthy of sex, no matter your weight, your shape, or your size.
Mm-hmm.
So have at it. Have a good time.
Which brings me to a question I had this summer. A really, really interesting social media entertainment phenomena blew up, and it really engendered a lot of conversation. And that was Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's very sex positive anthem, WAP. People were losing their minds about that, mostly men. The women, it was amazing on different podcasts and forums to see the conversations that brought about. Now, the way I see that, and as I had mentioned before, is for any situation or an issue that needs to be dealt with, you need those people that are out there that are going to stretch the boundary way out here so that when it comes back, it's here. So I see them as agents of change. Thank you, Cardi. Thank you, Megan. Do you think that was a positive? Was that moving conversations in a positive direction? That whole phenomenon.
I think, like you said, it was stretching the conversation and creating space to actually have the conversation, because we don't. Again, sex is a taboo topic.
Except for it's a guy rapper talking about it and talking about what he's going to do to her. Well, that's okay.
Right. That's
but
all
actually
right.
two women up there being very explicit about
own it and say, this is what I got and this is what it can do and all of that. So in that sense, yes, it was very sex positive in that it caused us to have conversations about it. Another piece of it that got discussed was something around the fact of, okay, should you have a WAP, or do you have a WAP? If you don't, you have a what we call a DAP, DAP. And what you do about that?
If you got a DAP, see Dr. Brandye.
Right. So there were other conversations that came about in terms of feminine hygiene and what it is that you need to do or not do, and what's normal and what's not normal. So it was definitely sex positive, definitely, okay, these are the things that the vagina can do and does do, and this is what's normal and this is what's not. But the other side of it that I think can be
deleterious to the conversation. Okay. Misconstrued.
Yeah, it can be misconstrued, is that in order for you to own your sexuality, you have to be masculine, and you have to do it in a masculine way. And that was the only issue that I had with WAP, was that it was glorifying what it seemed to be and how a man would come out and say, oh, well, I have this and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Whereas if you really want to be in your feminine essence, which is not a bad thing, and we want to be in our feminine essence, it's not about putting it on display. It's about knowing that you have it and walking in that confidence of it, and that being the attractive force, not necessarily, oh, well, I can, deep throat you and it'll be fine.
Yeah. But the proud ownership of your sexuality. Like, again, like stretch it over here to this extreme, but there's a spectrum. And I was just really happy to see just the conversations that sparked. Yeah. It's like, thank you. We need to have those conversations and have women having those conversations, and the comments that men made too. I mean, if they're really open to a conversation around it, to ask their questions or make their comments and get a woman's feedback on this, because again, if they're only getting an idea of what a woman's sexuality is from porn or male rap stars, like, you need to hear the other side of this one.
Definitely.
One of the comments that or a discussion that I had heard in another podcast that you had, you were talking about foreplay, and you were talking about how you just can't get up off the couch Maybe a man could just get up from watching Colbert and it's like, okay, game on. But a woman needs some time. And you had said at least 15 minutes or more of foreplay. Now, why is this so important?
Well, it's important because one, it takes a little bit more for us as women to get there, for things to get going. And part of that is just how our brains work, because we are masters of multitasking. So we can be doing this and that and the other. And, you know, in order for us to really get into and enjoy sex, we got to focus. So we got to bring the pleasure. So we
we're going to shut
focus.
down some of those channels. So we got
to close some of the tabs so we can focus. And so that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that it just physically takes longer for things to get going, for us to get to the point of being able to have an orgasm. So for a man, 5 to 7 minutes of stimulation, he'll orgasm. For a woman, it's anywhere from 11 to 17 minutes of stimulation before you get to orgasm. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you got to be physically having, you know, penile vaginal intercourse for that amount of time. Yeah. But you need that amount of time in terms of stimulation, whether that's the lips, the breasts, other areas of the body that that can give you an orgasm. So that's another piece of it. You just physically need that stimulation. But even before you get to the actual sex act and being intimate, foreplay starts in the morning when you say, "Good morning, beautiful." Foreplay starts when you get that text, "Hey, I was just thinking about you," or that call like, "Hey, how you doing? How's your day?" So foreplay is not just the sexual stuff. It is also the emotional stuff, the mental stuff. You know, just checking in with your partner, showing that you care. That also qualifies as foreplay.
Yeah, yeah. So you, as I had said, biohacks. Now, biohacks are the big thing that we're hearing on podcasts nowadays. You know, on top of being a peak performer in whatever your field is, the biohacks that are going to get you there. You have actually compiled a really great downloadable PDF with how many? A dozen different biohacks that we can all be using. And just in case somebody doesn't understand biohacks, it's the things you can do physically that are going to hack your biology, that are going to enhance your ability to do whatever. And in this case, it's to have better sex and enjoy sex more and be more in your sexuality. So downloaded the PDF, went through it. Excellent information. Number one was don't skimp on sleep. That kind of surprised me. I mean, we're hearing more and more about why. What's going on physiologically or from the doctor's point of view?
Yeah. So first and foremost, if you're sleepy, if you're tired, you're not going to want to have sex. Again, you're going to be trying to make it through the day. And if you can hit the highlights and make sure nobody dies, you get all the stuff done that you need to get done. You're fine.
Yes.
Game is, I'm good. I'm going to bed. I'm done.
Yeah.
And fatigue is the biggest reason, the most common reason that women give for not wanting to have sex. I'm just too tired. So don't skimp on your sleep for that. Second reason is that when you are not getting enough sleep, that is a stress-inducing state on your body, and you start to produce cortisol. The reason that is important is, one, cortisol is that fight or flight, is one of those hormones that gets released when you're in the fight or flight mode. So if you're in fight or flight mode, you're not thinking about having sex. You're like, okay, do I got to run from this tiger or do I have to stay here and fight it? What am I doing? But I'm not thinking about having sex and trying to have a baby.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is the precursor for our adrenal hormones and the fight or flight hormones is the same precursor for our reproductive hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So if you are in that fight or flight situation, your body's like, okay, we need these other ones so we can run and fight and do all the things. We don't need to have babies. So testosterone, estrogen, progesterone are less likely to be created. So over time, those hormone levels may be decreased. They may not be decreased to the point where physiologically we would say, okay, you have a deficiency, but the levels overall decrease. And that can lead to just this decreased desire for sex.
Another one that was surprising to me, but once I read the explanation, I was like, well, of course, was boost your vitamin D intake. We're hearing that for potentially protecting us from COVID. We're also hearing about here in the more northern latitudes, it keeps you from being depressed when you only have 8 hours of light a day. But now it's also good for our sexuality.
Yes.
Why?
Vitamin D is good for everything. It's one of those things like exercise is good for everything. Vitamin D is good for everything. So in the realm of sex and pleasure, one of the reasons is what you said, mood stability and helping our mood. If we're more positive, we're more likely to want to have sex. But the second piece of it is, the second and third piece. So the second piece of it is a lot of times our fatigue is related to deficiencies in different nutrients in our bodies. And vitamin D is also one of those ones that help us. And it's actually not a vitamin, it's a hormone. Most people don't know that it's a hormone. And it has some effects on our sex hormones. So if you do not have enough vitamin D, your body ends up creating more proteins to bind up your estrogen, which is important for us, not only for sex drive, but for even symptoms of menopause and things like that. So if we want to make sure our estrogen metabolism is good, we got to make sure our vitamin D metabolism and our vitamin D levels are good. And you should be aiming to have your levels at least 60 or higher.
And how can we measure this? We'd have to have a blood test for that?
Blood test. Yeah, blood test.
Okay.
Which now most providers should be doing and are doing, because we know that it has effects on your risk for developing cardiovascular disease, colon cancer, things like that. So you should be getting tested for vitamin D. And if you are deficient, then you should be taking supplementation and all that to get that level up.
This whole conversation about vitamin D and the lack of it, and what it's giving me this whole other perspective on world history, North versus South, and the aggression of whatever. That's a whole other conversation. They were just unhappy and they weren't having enough sex. Oh my God. That explains a lot.
See? It really does. It really does.
You also, now I'm not going to get into all the biohacks because you need to get over there. There will be links in the notes on both the YouTube channel and on the podcast. Get that download and also buy Dr. Brandye's book. But one other thing I want to talk about that you had mentioned as a biohack was the adaptogens. That's another thing I'm hearing a lot about this year. You said get an adaptogen. What is that?
So in a capsule, an adaptogen is any substance that helps your body to manage the effects of stress. And that's all it is.
So we're not talking alcohol.
Right. Right. Alcohol is not an adaptogen. So things like ashwagandha, maca.
Now, for a lot of people, actually ashwagandha prior to this year, I would not have known what that was. Maybe a kind of yoga, but it's not. What is it? That would have been my guess.
That is not an asana. So it is a root, and it comes in different forms, but essentially it is something that you can ingest. And what it does is mitigate the effects of stress. So it helps to decrease your cortisol levels. And by doing that, it helps just your overall well-being. But ashwagandha specifically also has some properties that, and we don't know why, but it helps sex. It helps your sex drive. So I am a big proponent of you taking some ashwagandha.
Going out and buying me some ashwagandha. And speaking of buying your book, so your book, My Oh My, has a really great cover. I love it. When did you write it? And what was your inspiration to write it? Just you weren't able to get the information to your clients in those quick little encounters?
That's part of it, yes.
Read my book.
Like, here, can you read this book?
Yeah.
And it's actually a very short book. So you could read it in maybe an hour and a half. And I made it that way because nobody get time to spend, hours and weeks and days trying to figure out, what I'm writing.
Yes.
So I'm very cognizant of that, and knowing, even on my own journey of self-discovery and all that stuff, it took years of compiling all this information. It's like, dude, nobody's got years to figure this out.
Exactly. And if you can distill it down to the very basics and the essence, it's going to change our lives and our relationship with our sexuality. Good.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a quick read. It's an easy read. And I put it together just so that it could be an accessible resource for women, and they didn't have to feel like they had to go here and go there and get this and get that. It's like, here's the thing, here's what you need.
Yeah.
Go for that.
And it's from an authoritative source. I mean, you're an OBGYN, you're a coach for women's pleasure and sexuality. I mean, yeah, you don't have to go other places. So do you have any programs coming up? Like that thing I had mentioned that you had at the end, the vision boarding. Do you have anything coming up in the near future?
I don't have any specific thing coming up. Probably the most recent thing that I have been promoting is my new mini course. It's called Stop Faking It, The Secret to Amazing Orgasms, because that is also an issue that comes up quite a bit.
Faking it?
When faking it.
Really?
Yes.
That's a thing? I thought it was a joke. Why would you bother?
No. For so many reasons. One of which is
things aren't going to change if you fake it. Oh, baby.
True enough. However, if you are trying to get by and just like, okay, if I can just do this so that I can then go and do the other things that I need to do. It's like, look, you got 5 good minutes and then I need to go over here.
Oh, baby.
Right. Oh, thank you. Okay, I got it. But yeah, it's a thing.
So you have a mini course on that.
So I have a mini course on that.
Now, is that a live thing, or can they do they do it self-paced, or
no?
Is it
it's
with
self-paced.
You? Okay,
it is self-paced. It is a self-study type of course. Again, it's quick. It's about an hour because nobody's got time for that. And you will get to understand and discover your body's pleasure map, your pleasure points. You will learn how to maximize your pleasure. You'll have the strategies for that. And you'll know how you can actually help and share with your partner what it is that you want and what you'd like to see in the bedroom.
Wow.
So
those are great takeaways. Well worth it. So where can people find this course?
So if you go to stopfakingitcourse.com,
okay,
you can get access to it. And I'm doing a special, so it is $100 off. So normally it would be $297.
Yeah.
So now it's $197 through the end of the month.
The end of January?
Oh, the end of January. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Oh, gee, I hope I get this out in time. We want people to be able to take advantage of that one.
Yeah. Well, let me know.
Okay.
We'll do. We can do like a coupon code or something.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
Listeners and viewers of this podcast get a special coupon code with Dr. Brandye. I'll take that out if you don't want to do that. So
that's fine.
Dr. Brandye 𝗪𝗁𝗁, but I noticed you go by Dr. Brandye. Thank you so much for being here with me today. This was I think it was fun. It was informative, but it's important. It's a really important conversation. And thank you so much for what you do around it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love having these conversations. This is what lights me up. So thank you for creating space for us to have this conversation and just having good questions, because it's been fun for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'll be talking to you. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Don't forget to take a look down in the notes to find any of the links to the goodies we talked about in today's podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel so you don't miss the next episode. Rate us or review us on iTunes or on YouTube, and share us with a friend that you think might just need a bit of inspiration to start doing her own awesome shit. Do you know an incredible gal that's all that you think the world needs to know more about? Head on over to our Facebook or our Instagram channel and DM me. Tell me about her. We'll see if we can't get her on the She's All That podcast. She's all